I hate New Year's resolutions because I think they're dumb. How's that for an introduction to an episode? I hate the thing we're about to talk about. Hello, my Time Crunch teachers, and welcome to the show. This is your team teacher, Mariel, aka curmudgeon teacher, here to help you optimize your teaching, technology, and time management, but more importantly, complain. And I am joined with third grade teacher, Stephanie Hedgepeth Lopez.
Hello.
Who actually came up with this topic. And I really like the topic. I'm just being snotty about it. So today we're talking about classroom New Year's resolutions for 2025. So you can laugh at us when we record our next episode in a month or two where we're like, oh yeah, we didn't do any of that.
Or what do we do with the broken resolutions?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the reason why I'm cranky about specifically New Year's resolutions is, one, as a teacher, it always feels odd because it's the middle of the school year, right? So if you want to start something, it could feel a little bit odd. But with that said, you and I also record an episode where we talk about it's also the perfect time to, if you notice something's not working in the current school year, it's a great time. Come back from a break. It doesn't even have to be winter break, which is longer for most
we have
schools.
the luxury of an extra week.
Yes.
So the kids have even longer time to forget what you've been doing.
True. Anyways, we wanted to focus on, though, even though I'm being cranky about it, I do think coming back from a break, whether it's winter break, spring break, a 3-day weekend, whatever it might be, is actually a good time. If you notice something's not working, you can change it. There is nothing in education that says, hey, if this thing you tried, you gave your best effort and it's not working, you have to stick with it to the book. I mean, there might be some schools or administration that's like, no, it must be done this way no matter what. But I think for the most part, maybe not necessarily like curriculum, but your systems, your classroom management, how you approach things, you have a little wiggle room.
Well, you can also tell the children, I'm getting you ready for the next year, and this is what will happen next year. So we have to start doing that now.
Yes.
It's true or not. I mean, it will be true. You can make it true.
Yeah. So what are some of your resolutions or things you might be coming back from break and changing or adapting for your third graders?
Well, I like to think of resolutions more as developing a new habit.
See, I like that. I like systems. I'm a very anti-goal person because I feel like sometimes, let me just make this about me, first of all, even though I just asked you the question, is I feel like the trouble with goals is sometimes, especially if they're a time frame goal, like, I don't know, forever ago when I was getting married and people want to like look a certain way for their wedding or whatever, then the wedding happens and you're like, oh, well, now what? Like that event that I was getting ready for is done. Whereas I like systems that are like, oh, well, regardless if this event happens or, you know, this thing is going on, once that thing passes, it doesn't matter because I've now developed this system. So I think when it comes to goals, I don't like a specific time frame where I'm going to hit this thing or do this thing because then that thing happens and I just don't set a new goal or I don't care or whatever. But I like the idea of developing systems.
Because my own personal resolutions that I made a few years ago that have stuck, or I decided I was going to make my bed every day.
Oh, that's a nice one.
And I do that. Mm-hmm. What's the other one? Oh, moisturize.
Oh.
I moisturize daily.
And you look really young, so clearly it's paid off.
It's working.
It's working.
Apparently.
So those are systems. I think those are systems. It's not like...
So I'm looking at some habits I can form that will make my life better. And having just graded a bunch of stuff the other day, I'm like, okay, I need to choose a day. I haven't decided yet where I will just enter stuff in our
grading system.
Mm-hmm. Because now that it's actually computerized and I actually figure out how to do it and not forget every time I open it, it's really nice at report card because it'll just spit out a score. Now you can change it, you know, based on like, oh, well, they've actually been doing better or they've been doing worse or whatever. I'm trying to get it so that I have enough things in there that I'm not like searching and trying to figure out what it is to grade.
No, but having a good grading system where like, okay, I enter everything in on a Thursday and then I hand it back on Friday or whatever it might be.
Something like that is what I need.
Timely feedback. I feel like I was better at timely feedback when I taught middle school just because you have so many different sections and, you know, they want to know what their score is on a quiz and whatever. When you teach second, third, or fourth grade, the kids are like, oh, I don't remember. Like, they don't,
like you hand it to them and they just throw it away. And like, why did I do anything on there?
Right. And if you teach the really little ones where they're not reading yet, or you have to write in such perfect handwriting for them to be able to read. Like that, I will say that is one benefit of teaching middle school. I can write kind of sloppy feedback notes, and the kids are,
I know it doesn't work to go, you need to be neater, and it's a big mess, and they can't read it anyway.
Right. I had to relearn how to grade things when I went from middle school down to second, because I'm like, oh, they can't read this whole sentence feedback, nor do they care. But no, let's go back. So you want to set up a grading system or process so that it's timely?
A grading habit so that at the end of the week, I will have entered, let's say, at least 2 scores and noted what things I don't have a score for. Because a lot of grading in elementary school is kind of like, well, this is how they're doing, and it's more
like
of a progress thing. So I need to like go, okay, I haven't really touched on this one as much as I need to, and then I can check. So it's putting in at least 2 scores somewhere and then checking for what something specific score I will focus on for the next week.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. So setting a system for timely grading and feedback and handing it back. And something I should note that it took me years to realize this as a teacher, you don't have to grade everything.
No,
not everything has to be a grade. It can just be a progress monitoring or a quick check or whatever.
Well, that's what I mean. Even like just going, okay, I'm going to listen today to everybody read and just, are they doing okay? Or even a check about how many times do they raise their hand or something like that. So even that kind of a score, like on the listening and speaking, just kind of a check-in and make sure that I talk to the kids that you don't hear from so much, the little quiet ones.
The other thing you were mentioning too is about making sure that you have data for all the different standards by the time you get to the report card, because nothing's worse than realizing, oh no, I should have had at least 4 or 5 assignments on this one standard and I have nothing, and what am I going to do? Is I have a blank report card that's just on the bulletin board by my desk, and every time I enter a standard, I put a little check mark next to it so I know, okay, well, I've hit that standard or I've assessed it.
That's
and
a
then
good idea.
I can glance at the blank report card, or I do it because our report cards have columns for each trimester. I'll put a mark like with a different color pen if it was a first trimester one, and then that way I could say, oh, I actually haven't assessed this standard since the first trimester, I should do it again. Or, oh, this is definitely a third trimester standard. But yeah, having a blank one is nice. I used to store it at the front of, I have a file with all the students' work that I don't hand back that I'm actually keeping to look at before I do parent-teacher conferences. And I used to have a blank one in the front there. I stole that from my friend Shannon. She used to put it in the front. Are there any other resolutions you're planning on?
Well, I always have the one, and I get better every single year, but I'm still struggling with the organization of my materials.
I think you've done great with that this year.
I have done better, but there's always, at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, where did I put it? I can't find my math book that I write in, that I share with the kids. I'm like, oh, okay, I can't find that. Or I copied this thing for tomorrow and I don't know where I put it. So I'm constantly struggling with that. And I did your thing, which you discussed about having a file folder with the dates that you just keep rotating. My problem is I wasn't actually opening the drawer where that was. So I think I'm going to move the files.
Step 1, open the drawer. Files actually are.
And actually put them in one of my file boxes that it's closer to my stuff. Just start as soon as or maybe even take it with me to the copy and just like stick it in there.
Yeah, I have what Stephanie is talking about, and I can link the video. It is actually my most watched video, is the 40.
It's a great idea. You just have to actually get in the habit.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an online teacher, you do everything through Google Classroom. It's not really your system. It's a system for us lower elementary where we have, worksheets or activities or things we have to hand out or we photocopy or we get ready. And I love it. And it works where basically it's a file system where it's every date, but it's rotating, right? So you have one for every month and whatever. I'll link the video because it makes more sense when you can see it. But you do actually have to open the cabinet that has all the files in it. But if you're somebody who doesn't, like if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. I've done the same file system where I put it in a milk crate, so it's out in front of you.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Like I have the crate, or else I have the ones that that has a handle. that have the hanging
around.
file folder. I can carry it around. And actually it just occurred to me, I need to just take it with me to the copy room. As I copy it, just stick it in the day that I need it.
Yeah, that's what I have for my my second most watched video, the portable grading bin.
Yes.
Where it has the same thing where you can have the like to be copied or the to be graded or to be returned. And what I've done, this doesn't quite work for middle school because if you have more than like 30 or 40 students, it just physically doesn't fit. But it's a portable grading bin that has those folders, like the to be copied folder or the, I need to grade this or whatever. And it basically keeps the clutter off my desk. But now, because I have 28 students, I actually have a file for each kid. So when I'm done grading, I put it in that kid's file and then I just pull it out on Friday and hand back their work that's been graded. So that's really nice too, to be able to have something contained, because I feel like the two-hand back work can pile up on people's desks too. So that's why I just do it once a week.
I'm laughing because I started putting it in their cubbies because they have cubbies.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some that have been in there forever.
All year.
Little pile of papers.
I will say that's what I like about elementary is you have the Friday folder or the take-home folder or the communication folder or whatever you call it, where they're supposed to with their return work or flyers.
I do because I send home a note every Friday, their little progress thing, and I do try to take a chunk and staple it there. But then what I found out is they were just bringing it back. It's like,
oh yeah. So I know this because my child was in Stephanie's class. Stephanie does something awesome. She has this feedback form where it basically tells the family and the kid how they did that week and what their little successes were or what they needed to work on. And you have a template. And it has little smiley faces on it or whatever.
Well, the kids do the smiley faces for their effort and behavior.
Oh, I never realized that. Maybe my kid probably didn't do it. He probably just
They're
skipped
supposed to do that.
Okay.
And then there's my notes, and I usually like, we're studying this, or, we need volunteers for whatever. And then I say, please write a note here. And, the thing is I've found out I've never had a class where everybody does it, but for the little chunk of teachers, of parents that do respond to it, it's really nice to have, because then I know I'm communicating with them, and then I save them, and then on parent conferences I'll like, I've noticed you haven't turned these in, and they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, these right here that I send home every week, and they're like, I've never seen them, and I'm like, well, look for it every single Friday. Even if I don't send it home, it's usually a note saying, I didn't send one home this week.
Yeah. No, you were really consistent with that. I mean, I remember getting them every week. I signed them every week. Whether or not my son returned them to you is a whole nother discussion. Yeah, but I did really appreciate it as a teacher. As a parent, seeing that. And it's a quick little check.
And it looks like a lot of work, but the biggest thing is to make sure I put everybody's name, and I try to do a comment every day.
You wrote a comment on all of them. Like a sentence or whatever.
I just try they did really well on this, or please do the homework, or they're coming late and eating breakfast in class. And
I feel like you used to get them done in that little half an hour right before school, or sometimes like at lunch. I'd see you circling
cranking them out.
But yeah, it didn't seem like it took too long once you
it doesn't once you get it going.
So it sounds like organization and timely, great. But it sounds like you have all the systems. It's just
I do. It's just using them and accessing them and making them for me. So it is my habit. That's the thing. It's not. The resolutions work best when it's a habit that you can form. Mm-hmm. A good habit.
I like grading on...
I got the bad ones. I the good ones.
The bad ones are great. I like grading on Thursdays because then I can turn back the stuff on Friday. And then since I'm lesson planning on either Thursday, if I squeeze it in, or on Friday, I can kind of see that feedback of like how they did that week before I launch into the planning. I feel like if you do your lesson planning too early in the week, you end up bumping or changing too many things because you're like, I didn't finish that, or they got through that too quickly, or whatever it might be for the following week, So yeah, grading on a Thursday is nice. And then I'm one of those people, I feel like this is very true, teachers will, or sometimes I'll put off grading and then it stacks up on the weekend, and I hate grading. I hate doing it.
Or on your vacation.
Yeah, I don't.
There's a whole stack at my house.
Oh, nice. I don't like that feeling of it being there.
And then when you do it, you're like, this is not that bad. It took me only this long. It's just that.
That's why I try to lesson plan on Fridays, because then I'm done. And it's, also no one is in the copy room on Friday. Everyone pieces out.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's the best. Every school I worked at, and we look out where Fridays are early release day, and we usually have teacher training or meetings or whatever. But in other schools where Friday wasn't the early release, Friday's always the best day to go and make your copies. There's no line.
Monday morning morning is not.
Monday morning's the worst. The copiers know, and they can sense it, and one will always break.
Or jam. Or constantly give you that one paper jam error. It gets in the same spot every time.
Or it'll be low on toner and you're just praying it doesn't end on yours.
There's this big line that goes right through all the math problems. You're like, great.
Oh, yeah.
They don't know what that is.
Yeah, Monday's morning's the worst. And then you will see sweet, kind friends and coworkers just turn on each other on Monday morning. If you're like, copier. If you are, Melissa coined this phrase, what does she call it? Jam and jet. If you jam the copier and jet and leave, you are at the bottom of the list of the teacher.
I do always try to say, hey, I tried this. The class is waiting. I have to leave.
Sure.
I'm
Sometimes
so
you cannot find the jam. Fine.
That's true.
But if it is very clear.
Or you've already cleared it 4 times and it did it.
And shout out to Megan, because Megan, I feel like the paper always runs out when it's her turn, because she is constantly the one who has to put the paper. Like I see her and I'm like, Megan, I feel like you're the only one that refills the paper. And she's like, I know, like it always is out. And then she's really smart because she'll just stack a bunch of extra paper right next to the thing so that hopefully it's not just
has to get it.
her. But I feel like shout out to Megan. Shout out to all the teachers who refill the paper for us. Because I honestly feel like it never goes out on me. I think I've only had to refill the paper once.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very... Because then I'm like, oh, it's done. Well, we're just going to copy it off the board, and I leave. And
then Megan comes in.
And then Megan comes in.
She fills it up for you. Don't do it Monday.
Oh, and one other habit is I have to realize where the students are and really get them to the next step, whatever that step is. Because I just graded some math tests and realized, wow, we're not there yet.
Yeah, they're not ready to go to the next step.
And analyzing all their mistakes, and I came up with a plan on how to try to redo subtraction addition, and we'll see.
Yeah, because you're in multi-digit addition and subtraction?
Yes, it's like up to the thousands.
Oh, okay. That's
so
hard.
Hundreds.
If they don't know borrowing and regrouping and all that, then nope.
Well, we have the switcheroos who 72 minus 37. Well, the difference between 2 and 7 is 5. So I'm just going to write that down because it's easier than borrowing to make the 12. And then
they always think that they're taking away from a larger number, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they'll change the order.
Like whatever number is the biggest, that's the one they'll find the difference of. Or another favorite, and brand new, this is kind of new, is like they'll do the math for the ones column and write the answer. And they do the math in the tens column and write the answer. And then do the math in the hundreds column. So they'll end up with 6,437 for a number that should be, 300.
Yeah, I feel like that strategy is a misinterpretation of the one where you do the numbers in expanded form and then you subtract them, but it's like the kids are half combining that idea with the standard algorithm.
Which is why I'm thinking, because I was watching a video about how addition and subtraction should roll out from kindergarten to like 4th or 5th grade, and seeing that I think they missed a couple things in kindergarten, 1st grade, so I don't really want to go back to 5 frames. I don't think we need to go that far back, but I might teach more of the expanded form of the number and what that means and what that looks like. And then so this is how I get my answer, because... You
mean like go over place value again?
Yeah. It's like they don't...
No, it's number sense. I feel like many of our students, not just our students at our school, but just children in the world, need so much more reinforcement with number sense. Just like reading, they need so much reinforcement.
I blame
phonics.
Digital clocks.
Yeah.
Because they never had to struggle to learn how to tell time on an analog clock so they could get their Mickey Mouse watch, right? You never learned that.
Well,
and the whole fractions go in there, multiplication goes in there. There's the fact that time is passing, the whole thing. I think they've just missed it.
Yeah, I can tell that in 5th grade when the kids who know how to tell time on an analog clock are much better at fractions and fractions of a minute and doing very quick mental math within the number of 60, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
And skip counting by 5s, multiples of 5, everything that goes in it. But also in PE, when I was like moving a clockwise circle and like half of them bump into each other because they
No.
Yeah. Bring back analog clocks. That's what
so, okay. So my habits were organization.
Yep, that too.
The grading and to know that I need to take them. I need to make sure that the They get addition and subtraction and multiplication need to be ingrained in their little brains. And they have to have some rudimentary idea of fractions. I know there's way more standards, but those are the things that really will carry through to the next grade and won't make their 4th and 5th grade teacher hate me.
I won't hate you. I'll just be like, how come this kid? No,
I taught it to them.
No, I think going back to fundamentals, and I think that is the benefit that we have having taught for so long and taught different grades is, okay, if they don't have this concept down in 3rd, then they are not going to get this concept in 4th or 5th or this other more advanced concept.
Expected, and so they just keep getting lost and more lost and more lost.
Right. It's expected that they have this foundation because next year's teacher moves on to X, Y, and Z or whatever. Yes, I think that is a nice benefit. And if you are listening and you are a new teacher, talking to the teachers that are in the grade levels above you, I think it's very helpful in them helping identify, like, no, this is the thing they have to come to me knowing and understanding. And here's a little wiggle room, or here's something that, I don't mind reteaching or kind of expect that the kids will need. But if they come to me and they don't know this, then that's hindering for, what we do in the class.
So what are your resolutions or new habits for the new year?
Well, I was thinking I'm loving this year. I don't know. I say that every year, like, this is my favorite class, but this class is awesome. And they are very respectful and they're very compliant. And I don't mean compliance in they do things because they're afraid or like only want a reward or they're afraid of consequence. Like, they're actually just happy-go-lucky kids who work together.
That's what I should do. I'll do it.
And the parents are great. Like, they're very supportive. And so I feel like, hey, okay, well, since classroom management is on lock, like they're great, and I feel like I could try a lot of things, I can now dive into some more of the nuances of the academic things that I want to do. And I noticed, because the state testing or the district test, whatever, the standardized testing the kids have to take, they didn't do as well as I expected based off of what they're actually doing in class or what they're capable of. And I realized that something I think that has changed, or at least changed in my teaching in the last 5 to 10 years, is there hasn't felt like I've been explicit in test taking strategies for the kids. And I don't mean in the day-to-day quizzes and tests. I mean the way that the online standardized testing format is a lot harder than I kind of thought it was, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's really not age level appropriate.
I think that's a good way of saying it. And like, I don't know, shame on me for not doing all the practice tests with them or whatever. Although I do feel like that would have just burnt them out.
Yeah, it's like this but I balance.
Do feel like the benefit to that is they learn how to navigate the actual interface of the test. Like, there were questions where it wasn't until the kid came to me and said, it's not letting me go to the next question and I don't know why. And I'm selecting the answer, but it's not showing up, like that kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, maybe there's a glitch in the system. And it's not until I look at it, and I had probably 5 kids on the same question. Because when they first came to me, I didn't realize it too, didn't realize that some of the words were hyperlinked, meaning like you could click on the actual word in the paragraph. And so it wasn't obvious. It was the type of thing that usually in those standardized tests, you type in a word, or you have a multiple choice and you select the word, or you, I don't know, like have some highlighted phrase or whatever. But what the test needed them to do is there was a paragraph of text, and they actually had to click on specific words, but it didn't say in the directions, click on the word that, on the specific word or whatever. It was phrased in a way that was like, which word best demonstrates blah, blah, blah meaning or whatever it might be. And it wasn't obvious that you could click on the text. And so I realized, oh, I wonder how many kids got that wrong simply just because of the format of the test. Or I noticed on some of our fluency tests that we have, it's a pull down menu for selecting the right word to fit into the blank or whatever it might be. And they didn't realize there was basically more than one word they could select. And so it defaults to like a certain word.
No, but there's one, because we just did that. And the kids, our reading coach person came in and we actually went over how to take the test.
Yeah.
And so we could actually see a lot of improvement just because they understood how to just answer the question.
Right. And for somebody listening that's like, oh, why didn't you just show them how to select that answer? Yes, you're right. But every question on that standardized had a different format. So it wasn't like, oh, I just needed to show them how to do it on this one question. It was like, all these other questions were also formatted in a completely different way on how to select the answer. And I feel like that is a huge bias in standardized tests, because if, many of our students don't have internet access or they don't have their own device at home or whatever. I mean, they have the school Chromebook, but that's that's assuming they have internet at home, which not all my students do. And so I think there's some privilege in that bias in that test of students or kids who have access to these online games or activities or resources that have clicked on things or noticed words or hyperlink or whatever it might be, have a little bit of an advantage, whereas like my students or me clearly had to go through and be like, oh, this is what the test physically is asking you to do. So we have another set of tests they do in the spring. And I, as part of my resolution, is to get all those, because there's practice ones they can take, not even for the content, but I want them to feel strong in understanding how to navigate the test and the menus. And when it asks it like this is how you input an answer or whatever it might be. Because I feel like that was part of the reason why they maybe didn't score as high, or what they're showing in the classroom, because it was just simply the mechanics of the test. So I'm going to let them practice the actual test taking format and the navigation of the menus. And this was something so simple. And it wasn't until I showed all the students that I was like, this is why their reading score was so low. That test font defaulted, I kid you not, to like a size 6. It was the smallest font I've ever seen in my entire life on their little Chromebooks. And it wasn't until I showed them, hey, in the toolbar, you can press this button and it zooms in, that all of them were like, oh, that's way easier to read. And so this is why they're so sweet and they're so compliant. That's just a typical kid thing. I see this text, that's just how it is. Like, I can't interact. It's a state test. Like, I'm not allowed to talk. I'm not allowed to whatever. They don't realize they can change it or like make the font bigger. Yeah. Like, I totally don't fault them on that. But because zoom in is a little spyglass, which, by the way, how many children know that, like the little icon?
They don't even know what that is.
Yeah, like, why would they know that? And so that is when I realized the tool icons might not be as
because they were made by us old people, not like the kids where they would have some Minecraft reference or something.
Oh, yeah, actually, maybe they do. Maybe those kids did fine and everybody else was like, I don't know how to make the font bigger. But something that simple, it made me feel... I was happy that I could be like, oh, yeah, let's all do this. But at the same time, I'm like, how many years have I just assumed by 5th grade, right? Because they've been taking this test every year since, 2nd or 3rd or whatever it might be. I would assume, oh, yeah, they would know how to zoom in. Nope. So that is my warning to all teachers. Like, don't assume they know how to do the test if you're teaching 5th, 6th, 7th grade. Like, you might actually have to show them a tool they've never accessed.
I personally can't remember which way to log into every single test that we do like 2 or 3 times a year.
Oh, yeah. I always
compared to the one that's once a year. So I'm like, okay, if I can't remember which button to, which website, which password, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Because they take so many different tests that if we ourselves as teachers can't even remember how to set up the test, like how do we expect them to remember?
It takes me in like 4 or 5 years, like, oh, yeah, that's right. This is the one where I do this.
Yeah, and the test formatting actually has some cool tools. Like the one we just did, the NWEA, they have this highlighter tool where it'll black out all the text except the one line that they're reading, so it helps them focus a little bit. And then they had this button that was an answer eliminator, not like, so you want to be a millionaire, or like 50-50.
Call friend.
Right, but most of the kids are like me. When you're taking a multiple choice test, you get rid of the ones you know are for sure wrong. And the test,
it'll actually cross it out.
Yes, it'll cross it out for you. So it visually, I think, helps them, because what I like about the NWEA is they have unlimited time pretty much, right? They're not like pressured by finishing it in a time frame. And so if they want to take the time and eliminate wrong answers, it actually had an answer eliminator, and it also has text to speech on kids with accommodation. Yeah, on the directions, not on the actual reading, unless that's an accommodation. And many of the students didn't realize that was an option. Like they could have the question read to them because the icon was an ear. And I know like that implies like, oh, you can hear it. But in the kids' mind, they didn't really...
That's some inference making skills, which they are having trouble with anyway.
Right. Anyways, so I want to teach them that and just how to navigate the online test. And then also something that I feel like I learned and I'm strong in is multiple choice testing on how to identify the wrong answer and eliminate wrong answers so that you can now, instead of having a 25% chance of guessing, you now have a 50% or whatever it might be. I feel like that is a skill that needs to be taught explicitly, like how to look at the answers and know when they are wrong, or what kind of, if the question is asked a certain way, what kind of answer are they looking for, and that kind of thing. So I want to focus on that, because I know as a teacher, I don't give a lot of multiple choice tests just in general. That's not how I like test children.
Maybe that's what we need to do a little bit too.
So I think when in education we moved away from the drill and kill, which I agree with, like I don't think that's the only way to teach. Unfortunately, we also eliminated some of those test taking skills, and I don't think they necessarily need to be prioritized, but they do need to be explicitly taught. And something I really benefited from when I was last summer studying for the wine test, the WSET, I passed, by the way, multiple choice test, but I passed it. And there is a YouTuber called Wine with Jimmy, which is so clear, Jimmy talking about wine, but he's actually an exceptionally good teacher. The wine test really is like, can you read this fact and just remember it? Like that's basically all it comes down to. And he does a really good job of explaining the reasoning behind some of the questions. But what I loved is he had sample WSET tests where he just pulls up the questions and he doesn't just say like, oh, the right answer is B. He goes through A, B, C, and D and explains why the wrong answers are wrong. So he'll say like, well, we know that A is wrong because we're looking for an answer that's a region in France, and this is a region in Germany, and so you can eliminate A. And so he literally did that on every single question, and that helped me not only know what the right answer is, but you're also obviously learning why the wrong answers are wrong, and thereby sort of implanting the right those answers or that information into your head, and you start to memorize like, oh, that is a place in Germany, and so that helps you on question 14, but not on this question. And I found that very helpful. So I feel like going through with the kids where you throw a multiple choice question up on the board or the TV or whatever you have that you're projecting to the students, and they're not just identifying the right answer, but they have to go through and say why the wrong ones are wrong, I think can be very beneficial to the class.
Right. They also have to, I don't think we teach them the art of BS very well either.
What do you mean?
Like I have kids agonizing over like a choice. Like, well, I don't want to write about either one because I don't like either one of them. And just learning how to go, hey,
just make it up.
Make it up. It's okay. That
I feel like Americans are really good at that. Like when I talk to people or friends that went through different education systems in other parts of the world, they're like, oh no, we learned the facts or the information. But Americans, man, you could stand up and do a speech about something that I give you like 5 minutes ahead of time because we're good at just communicating.
But that's the part I don't think some kids know.
They need to be more Americanized in the BS factor.
Like just choose something. It doesn't. You really don't have to like. It's like wait, when we have the little like poll of the day, which do you prefer? And I have kids say, well, I don't like either of them. And I'll go, what if you have to choose one right now? What if it's a test and you have to just choose one?
Just commit.
Which one is the least worst? Like that kind of thing. Because I think that's another issue they have sometimes with testing is making a decision, feeling like it has to be so true to themselves. It's just an answer.
Just answer
the question. Write something.
Yeah.
Nobody's looking at what your answer. They're looking at how you organized it and how you put it in there.
Yeah, good point.
What your thought process
There are kids who have the anxiety over it needs to feel 100% right, or it needs to feel very true, or that sort of thing. Yeah, I get that. Especially if it's a poorly written test too. And like, you're like, well, this is kind of true, but not like all the time true. Yeah. So maybe that's part of the conversation.
Sorry, we just got way off of resolutions here. And
whatever. I was talking about wine testing as if that matters. No, but it did help me. It did help me figure.
You brought your real life into teaching.
Exactly. Also, I noticed because, as schools have gone to one-to-one devices, whether it's Chromebooks or iPads or whatever it is, the students don't instinctually, for math or other testing, think to do their work on a piece of paper. So I noticed when the kids were doing the math NWEA, they are given a piece of blank scratch paper that they can figure out problems. But something about that transition from they are reading and looking at problems on a screen to now I have to pick up a pencil and work the problem out next to me. I think especially for problems that were maybe hard or challenging, it's sort of just easier to just guess or select an
Yeah.
answer than to like, okay, wait, hold on, let me double check this. And so a strategy I want to help the kids with is getting over that little minor hurdle of going from, yes, I am looking at this on a screen, but I need to work it out on a paper next to me. And I know that sometimes the tests have a, I don't know, like workbook area where you can, but it doesn't work because they have to use the trackpad and the writing gets all crazy. And I never would use it.
And they end up messing around with it just because that part's fun.
Yeah, they get to like color, but it doesn't, I actually feel like we're not there tech wise. Even if they have the little stylus, it just doesn't work. It doesn't look right to them and it gets sloppy. And I feel like, yes, having them take the time to do the work. And I'm not one of those teachers, especially with math, where I'm like, you have to show your work. You have to show your work. However, I do feel like many of them caught their errors when they actually tried to figure it out on paper. And then something I do with them when we are actually taking a quiz in the class is I have the students look over all the questions and then I have them circle or star or whatever you want the question that they're going to answer first that they know the answer to. So sometimes tests are written where maybe the easiest question isn't the first or second question, it's at the end, or maybe the student just feels more confident in certain areas and the 9th question I asked is easier for them than the first. And so I actually have them read through all the questions, find the one that's the easiest for them to answer, they feel the most confident in answering, circle it, and then that is the one I want them to answer first. And I noticed that what that does is it builds this sense of accomplishment momentum, like, oh, that one's done. Opposed to when I didn't do that, if the hardest question for them was question 1 or 2, they would just stare and they would just get stuck and freeze.
I'm amazed at how long a kid can stare at a paper.
Yeah, it actually, it is shocking how.
Or you gave them like 2 days and different times to do it and you come back and you're like, you didn't finish number 1. Because they just stared at it.
Yeah, it's that freeze. Yeah. And I think giving them permission to be like, move on, just go to question 3. And yeah, because that surprised me too, like how long a kid will just freeze on that first or just not move on. And also too, sometimes when I do that where they read every question or at least look over them or whatever it might be, they realize the quiz or test like isn't that big of a deal. Like they're like, oh, this isn't that hard, or oh, this looks like this problem we did last week or whatever it might be.
Or one was the worst one, everything else I can do.
Yeah, just skip it. I don't care. Like do it out of order. And I feel like when they get that test momentum of they're answering what for them is the easiest and the most accessible first, then the next problem they're like, okay, well, let me find the next easiest one and go there. And it has drastically reduced the kid who just sits and stares at that first question. Forever. The other thing I do too, I actually love this as a teacher. I like seeing it in action, is I'll hand out a quiz or a test and I make sure every pencil is completely out of sight. So there are no pencils, there are no writing implements. They're nowhere to be seen. They have to be hidden, and you'll see why in a minute. And I let them look at the test and look at the questions silently because, kids need that think time. They need to look at what they're looking at. And then I let them walk around and talk to any kid they want or group of kids or friends. I don't care about the test. They just cannot have a writing implement in sight. So this works really good for like essays. Is they walk around, they talk about, oh, okay, I don't understand this word, or like, what's this asking, or what are you going to write about? And I'm not concerned about cheating because like, say it's a math quiz that has 9 or 10 questions. Even if a kid randomly is like, oh, the answer to number 3 is 12 or something like that. And say it's the right answer. If a kid is able to memorize that, then part of me is like, oh, cool. Maybe they actually know how to do it. And with most of my math stuff, it's multi-step problems too. It's not, I mean, sometimes I'll put some mental math things in there just for fun and to give the kids a win. But in most cases, there's steps they have to do to answer the thing. And if they have no answer right, except that one random one is right, then sure, maybe they, whatever. But for the most part, it's fascinating. The kids self-regulate. They don't cheat. Like they're not going around saying, oh, this is the answer, because
they can't write it.
Yeah, they can't write it down. But also they have this is why I love our community. They have this intrinsic, like, no, like that's easy, or that's cheating. Or, I don't know. Like they have this kind of cute, guarded, like, no, I'm not just telling the answer to somebody.
Right.
Like almost like if I give them the permission to talk about it, then it takes away the fun of cheating or like.
That might be it. Because I don't even think they totally understand cheating in some ways.
True. But I love, yeah, it's so fun though. Like try it sometime especially for writing tasks. I really like it.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah, it's really cute. And if you do it for math, I mean, especially with third grade, they're not going to memorize all the answers anyways, but having them go around and talk strategies, and inevitably I'll hear multiple children go, okay, well, remember, when you're adding fractions, the denominators have to be the same. So like number 4, they're the same, but number 5, they're not the same. And they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, good. And then they'll remember it. And
that is a good idea.
And plus it relieves a little of the anxiety because they feel like, ooh, we can share answers, but they don't remember the answers. So it's fine. And if they cheat, like, who cares? They're not going to memorize 9, 10, 12 different answer. It's just not how their kids work. That's just not what they do. I'm not concerned. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not concerned about cheating, and taking away that stigma of like, you can't talk about the test also makes cheating not as fun because they get to walk around and talk about it. Okay. So the last goal or system or whatever is I'm just going to double down on reading. Like they're just going to be reading. They can read for fun. They can read a book.
Can they sneak read?
They can sneak read, like my own son, sneak reading in his desk. Because one, I want them to enjoy reading. I want them to read for pleasure. I want them to see it as something that is interesting or enticing. But most importantly, they need to build their reading stamina.
Oh, totally.
And they need to build it through books. And I don't care if it's a graphic novel. I don't care if it's nonfiction. I don't care if it's a picture book, but it needs to be a book because I want them to work on building their focus and attention for something that is over a longer period of time. And I feel like as teachers, that is very, very hard. And I remember this when we went to online teaching during COVID, it wasn't, I need to be engaging or interesting as a teacher or compared to the other teachers or other educators. No, you were competing against YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, like Netflix. It wasn't like, me versus like, other people are teaching online. It was me versus the world and the fight for attention and instant gratification and that dopamine rush and whatever. And I actually sort of, in some respects, feel for kids that they are constantly bombarded by this like visual stimulation or auditory or noise or whatever it might be, that understands that their attention span is fractions of a second. So it's constantly cutting and changing different angles. And then they walk into my classroom and it's like, welcome to the plant lady den. Sit quietly now. I mean, like, that would be rough, I appreciate that is a hard transition when during break or on the weekends or after school, just the presence of like siblings and whatever, right? And then to walk into this controlled environment that is not as engaging or stimulating or whatever, that is a rough transition. So they need to work and build that stamina, and it's okay to be bored. It's okay to have that time to sort of think and reflect and that sort of thing. But I understand that is a huge swing for most kids. So I want to help them with understanding reading and reading something that takes a while, like a novel or like a book, and building up that stamina to silent read. And I think something I'm going to do is the kids are pretty good. Like I actually think they all have found books that they enjoy because twice a week I do fluency checks where they sit with me and they read out loud and I help them focus on a specific skill or whatever it might be. I feel like they're all pretty good at picking a book they like that's, quote, at their reading level or whatever it might be. But some of them, when they go to sit wherever they want, I know can't handle the stamina of just sitting in silence and reading, and they want to either be chatty or they're distracted or whatever it might be. So I'm going to just have them all wear headphones. So it doesn't matter if the headphones are plugged in or not. I don't care. But I'm going to have them put their little headphones on. Just the act of them having headphones on keeps them from talking to each other, because you either have to talk super loud or they just don't think to talk to each other. So I'm going to have them silent read with headphones on.
That's a good idea.
Which sounds goofy, but I think until we can build up the stamina. And they're actually at the point where, I think my fifth grade, most of them can do it for 15 or 20 minutes, which I think is a good chunk of time for fifth grade. Ideally, I remember when I taught sixth grade, they could do it for 30 or 40 minutes way back when. It's like 20 years ago. But I do feel like most kids couldn't just sit in silence and read something that was challenging but doable for more than a couple minutes without messing with each other. So that's what I want to do. So I want to help them with test taking so they can feel confident and being able to demonstrate the knowledge they have, because they're a smart group of kids. And I just feel like there's a little bit of bias in the test, but a little bit of challenge and just understand they navigate the test. And then I want them to just be reading, because while I do feel like as a society, we are reading a lot, whether it's on tablets or phones or billboards or whatever it might be, I don't think we are reading books or novels or something that requires sustained focus. And when I taught middle school, I noticed that was incredibly hard for some of the children to actually get through a book, because you have to train your mind to do it, to read for long periods and to follow a plot for a really long time. Because I've even noticed kids today, and I'm not a teacher who just like puts movies on for the kids. It's just like not my jam. But I have noticed the few times that different teachers have put on a movie or whatever, the kids can't sit through it.
No.
Like, have you noticed that? And granted, maybe it's because I've seen this with my own kids. Movies are just like on demand now. I mean, I remember having to like go to the movie, go to Blockbuster, or back in the day before you could rent videos, you just had to wait until Wizard of Oz came on once a year, or like you had to wait until It's a Wonderful Life came on or whatever. And so I feel like something as simple as like a movie is almost too long for kids.
Which is why you go to a movie now and there's all these people just talking.
I don't go to movies. I can't. I'm sorry. This is so mean. Did I interrupt you?
No, it's fine.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
I got so impassioned and angry. I can't do movies or concerts because I cannot be around the other people at the movies or concerts. Because first of all, it is very expensive, especially concerts, right? Concerts used to be like you could get a ticket for whatever and show up the day of and sit in some horrible seats, but still hear the performer. But with everybody's like phone in my face or in each other's faces, and everyone, this is super mean, singing along. I didn't pay hundreds of dollars to hear the people around me sing. Sorry. Or yes, at the theaters, like people pull out their phones, or I know it is so curmudgeon-y. And I don't mean like kids
it's
movies.
just you're an old soul. You need to be back in time.
No, I'm cranky. I actually don't mind going to kids movies because the kid chatter or the giggling or the comments endlessly entertains me. Like that I can handle. So if I went to a kids movie in a theater, I would be perfectly fine. But it's so bizarre to be watching a dramatic film or something, and it's like a tense moment, and then like somebody's answering a text, or like their phone is beeping, or like something's going on, or I don't know. Yes, I'm fine admitting that I'm cranky and curmudgeon-y about it, but I just find the light distracting when people are pulling out their phones. I'd almost rather have people talk and yell back at the screen, because I'm like, oh, at least they're watching it and they're interacting. Yes. Like that I can almost handle more than somebody like straight up just texting somebody through a full movie, or people answer the phone. Like, first of all, who calls? No one calls anymore. So the fact that somebody's calling you while you're in the theater and you pick up the phone is just bonkers to me. I don't even know why I got so cranky on this. You were mentioning attention span, and I just went off the rails. But this is why I don't go anywhere. This is why I buy movies on demand, so I don't have to deal with other people.
So this topic of resolutions has gone... Somebody's tuning in going, wait, what? Movies? No.
Okay, so, but it is focus and attention span, and grown adults can't even handle it. I see people wigging out in the grocery store in line when they have to wait, and just wait, and they're like pulling out phones and they're doing stuff. Yeah. It's so fascinating to watch. It is, and why do I care? It's like their time. But when they're not paying attention, and I'm like, the line has moved forward. Like, you need to go. Like, I have someplace to be. That's what I find really fascinating. But I think it's okay. I guess what I'm saying is everybody needs to be okay with being a little bored and being a little contemplative and doing things that take more focus and time. And I would like to help the children with that in a way that's enjoyable. It's not, I'm not trying to get punished. Like, you must do this now. Yes, that's what I would like to do to help them.
Mariel's resolutions are to test them and make them bored.
Yep. more standardized testing and more silence in the 5th grade class. Correct. So that in 20 years from now, I can go to a movie. I mean, there won't be movie theaters. We'll have some like neural implant that the movie just goes straight to our brain. But if there is still a movie theater, then I will be like, finally.
Finally, silence. I can listen.
Thank you so much for your kind attention today. See, these people listen.
They're like,
Good
what did
you.
I do?
Sorry.
I want that hour of my life back. No.
Hey, the next episode I'll post will be like to the point and short.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Until next time, teachers. Bye for now.
Bye.